Good morning, Catherine. Also, good morning to the participants. Nice to see you all of you here. Caterine, seja bem-vinda ao segundo Silsim. É um prazer tê-la conosco e podemos ouvi-la sobre seus conhecimentos e experiências com Lesson Study. Antes de tudo, deixe-me apresentá-la brevemente para os nossos participantes. First of all, let me introduce you briefly to our participants. Catherine Carol Lewis é graduada em Psicologia Social pela Harvard University, possui doutorado em Psicologia do Desenvolvimento pela Stanford University, possui inúmeros trabalhos sobre Lesson Study desde 1997, trabalha na Mills College, onde lidera um grupo de estudos sobre Lesson Study, e ela atualmente preside o WALS, que é um congresso itinerante internacional e é a World Association of Lesson Study. So, once again, welcome. After your presentation, we take some time for questions from our participants. Thank you. Catherine, you can start your presentation, please.
So is my presentation showing up?
Yes.
Yes, you can see it?
Everything's okay.
Okay. Sorry. Good morning. Thank you very much for this kind invitation. I would like to talk about a school that's used lesson study to create joyful, powerful mathematics. And I'll talk just about one school, but there are actually about 6 or so schools that have done very similar work. I'd like to thank my funders for this work, several US government agencies and the Gates Foundation. And I'd also like to thank my colleagues in this work, who include many educators in San Francisco and Oakland, California. The school I'm going to talk about is called John Muir School, and you can see there, although San Francisco is a very rich city, this school is not a rich school. Nearly all of the children come from very low-income families. Nearly all of them are children of color. About 40% of them do not have English as their first language, and about 16% are homeless or challenged by housing. Now, the district of San Francisco, you can see the black lines with the X's show the mathematics standardized test scores in the district as a whole. And you can see this school in 2015 had much lower achievement than the district as a whole. So over on the left, you can see this school, Muir School, had achievement at less than half the level of the district as a whole. And I have to say that our standardized test is one that's very challenging. It's a 3.5-hour standardized test that's used in about 12 US states. And children have to solve problems that they've never seen before. It's a very demanding test. And you can see across the chart that African-American students of Hispanic or Latino background, English language learners, and low socioeconomic status students were especially quite a bit lower than the district. But over that 5-year period shown from the year before they started lesson study to the year 3 years into school-wide lesson study, they showed dramatic increases in achievement, including in all of those subgroups. So how did they do that? Think a little bit about if you were going to try and create that dramatic change in learning in your site, how would you create that change in learning? Well, what happened at these sites was they shifted to teaching through problem solving. Teaching through problem solving is very common in Japan, but very rare in the United States. American educators have been trying to do problem solving for about 40 years, but it's very hard. They have not been able to achieve it. But even in 1980, the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics in the US was urging that problem solving be the focus of school mathematics. But most US schools continue to use what we often call I do, we do, you do, that the teacher shows the procedure and imitate it. So teaching through problem solving is quite different because the teacher presents a task without showing students how to solve it. Instead of teacher showing students how to solve it, the students themselves need to figure out methods to solve it. And by figuring out those methods, they build the new mathematics. So what's a mathematics problem? A mathematics problem is a task for which students have not previously been taught a solution method. If students have been taught a solution method, then it's an exercise, not a problem. Okay. In teaching through problem solving, each new mathematical concept or procedure is taught by trying to solve a problem that requires it. And students build the new mathematics by discussing strategically selected student work. So here we see an illustration of teaching through problem solving that comes from Akiko Takahashi and Tom McDougall. Most US lessons end with what you might call show and tell. Students show their solutions and tell about them. But teaching through problem solving includes an additional element called neriage, where students discuss the solutions, and from the solutions, they build the new mathematics, new ideas, new questions, new problems. So that final discussion element is missing from most US lessons. So I'm going to show you a little example of teaching through problem solving. We're going to see a problem. There are 27 children. Each roller coaster car holds 6 passengers. How many cars do we need? This is the first time that students have seen a problem where you need to round up to the next whole number. So there are 27 children. Each car holds 6 passengers. How many cars do you need? If you simply divide and get 4 cars, then 3 children are left out. So this is the first time children have confronted a problem like this. Okay, so now let's watch the video.
Jorge? Just a minute, Catherine. George is coming with the video.
Thank you, Jason. And Jaden.
Today I learned you can always use multiplication for division problems. Also, Comoristic helped me.
Thank you. And Jovan.
Today I learned that idea storms create hand-raising storms, which is good so you can know what people are thinking.
Did you guys feel like we had a hand-raising storm yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was nice. Here's what we're going to think about today. There are 27 children.
A professora está introduzindo o problema matemático. São 27 alunos, 27 crianças.
So our question is, how many cars do we need? As you
Quantos carros
finish writing
necessitam?
your problem, I want you to think about what is the math sentence that we can use to help
Sabendo
us
que
solve
cada
this
carro
problem.
comporta apenas 6 crianças. Esse é o problema
Pause for
proposto.
a moment, and even if you don't have your math sentence jotted down yet, that's okay. I want you to turn and talk to the person sitting next to you, and I want you to talk about two things. One, I want you to share the math sentence that you think is going to help you solve this problem. And two, I want you to talk about what do those numbers mean in our story. All right, turn and talk to the person sitting next to you.
Solicitando uma interação entre os alunos, sobretudo sobre os números que estão dispostos no problema.
And the 27 means the number of children, and the 6 means the number of each persons can acquire the whole day passengers.
John, would you be willing to share your math sentence?
My math sentence is 27 divided by 1 equals...
27 divided by...
No, 27 divided by 6, that's right.
I see some people agreeing. Does anybody have a different idea? Okay, so we have 27. You agree?
Yeah.
John, do you want to talk about how you knew it was 27 divided by 6? Do you want to call on someone that can try to read your mind?
I think it's 27 divided by 6 because the 27 is there are 27 children and each car holds six people, so I think it should be 27 divided by 6.
We are going to take a couple of minutes, quiet minutes, to try to solve the equation 27 divided by 6.
A professora conduz o raciocínio por meio de questionamentos.
Can you pause where you are? And I want you to turn and talk to them about the strategy that you're using. Talk to them about if you were able to solve the problem. And then take a moment to add anything that you thought of while you turned to talk to your partner to your notebook. So that, Jason, would you share loud and proud what you did in your notebook?
So
Okay. That was not the whole video, but at the end, the students show their solutions and they come to the insight that 6 remainder 3 is not a good solution for that problem, that you need 7 cars. And there's a very interesting discussion among the students. So they come up with that idea. And one of the students says, when you're just putting seeds in packets, you can leave some seeds out. But when you have children and a roller coaster, you can't leave out the children. So they have a very big aha related to the problem. Okay. So how did teachers come to be able to do this kind of teaching? So one thing that changed was classroom learning routines. And another thing I'd like to talk about is teacher learning routines of school-wide lesson study. Okay, so I think you noticed in the video the use of journals by the students. They were writing their mathematical thinking, solving the problem in a journal. You probably noticed the board made the problem and later student thinking very visible. Students led the discussion with their ideas, and students led the summarization of learning. And you can see this whole video online if you want to see the student-led discussion and summarization of learning. Okay, so you can see, for example, students working out their thinking in a journal. Students work out and revise their thinking problem. They often write down classmates' ideas that provided them new insights. They summarize the lesson and they reflect on what they learned. And at the very beginning of the lesson, we saw students reading 4 students' reflections from the previous day. You know, I learned that we can use multiplication to figure out division, or Kimura's thinking helped me. Those were students' reflections from the previous day journal. And every day the teacher begins the lesson with students' journal reflections from the prior day. And students are very excited to see, is my journal reflection going to be used today? And to hear other students thinking about their thinking. Journals also allow students to revisit what they learned in previous lessons, to see the growth in their own mathematical thinking, to appreciate the value of classmates' ideas, and to develop the habit of reflecting on how and why their own thinking changed. So they become metacognitive. By looking at their journals. In their journals, they're constantly reflecting on, what did I learn? Why did my thinking change? Here's a sample page from an English translation of a Japanese textbook on what a journal, how you might write a good journal entry. This is a page designed for children. And you can find this page online along with lots of other examples of journal writing at different grade levels. A second thing is organized board use. Students, 3 or 4 solutions from students are on the board, and they're shown in big writing, neat, often reproduced by the teacher, so that all the students can see them and discuss them. And board use, the student work is strategically selected and ordered to build the new mathematics. And with an organized board, students can find each element of the lesson in a familiar place if they get distracted or they need extra time. And they can see the story of the lesson. What was the problem? What were the strategies we tried? What allowed the problem to be solved? Maybe what were some misconceptions we had that we overcame? And they can compare the solution strategies with models, with pictures, with expressions side by side so they don't disappear. Often when we use an overhead projector, one solution shows and then it disappears and you see another solution. So it's different from that. Sorry. And students can experience an organized model on the board for their own note-taking and thinking. And they can become metacognitive as they see how new ideas are developed in mathematics. So the student-led discussion emerges from the students' talk and the students' work rather than the teacher telling them the solution. So students present their work at the board and ask classmates, do you have any comments or questions? And teachers ask key questions only as needed. The student-led summarization, about 5 or 10 minutes before the end of class, the teacher asks a question like, what did we learn today? And waits until most students have raised their hands. Based on student ideas, the teacher writes a mathematically correct summary on the board, which is copied by the students. And then the students also write individual reflections. What did I learn? What am I confused by? What do I want to learn next? Might be typical prompts. So You can find out more about the discussion at each phase of the lesson. So discussion to grasp the problem, discussion to solve the problem, to present your thinking, to summarize and reflect. You can find that on our website. I'll give you the address also at the end. You can see examples of that, videos from kindergarten, second grade, fifth grade, showing discussion at those different grade levels. So this is a picture of the website with circles around the different aspects of teaching through problem solving. So for example, you can find a section on journals, a section on board work, a section on discussion, and lots of videos. Teaching through problem solving, although American educators have aspired to do it for more than 40 years, teaching through problem solving needs support from a strong teacher learning routine like school-wide lesson study. Why? Teaching through problem solving makes heavy demands on teachers' content knowledge, and teaching through problem solving requires teachers to give up comfortable routines, such as simply demonstrating to students how to solve a problem. So that's why it requires strong teacher learning routines. So the learning routine that I want to talk about is lesson study, and I think you all know what that is, but basically teams of educators collaborating to study the content, plan a lesson, teach it, and reflect on it. We saw in the video a school-wide research lesson, which also included outsiders. It wasn't a typical research lesson. It wasn't just the teachers at the school. It also included some outsiders. And at Muir and several other schools, it was not just one team, but the whole school was involved in lesson study. And there were two elements in addition to the lesson study cycles. There was a school-wide vision, and there was planning for knowledge flow within the school and knowledge flow outside with the outside. So the vision was formed by all the teachers together saying, think about our students 5 to 10 years from now. What are all the qualities we would like our students to have 5 to 10 years from now? Think about that for your own students. Imagine you met your students 5 years from now or 10 years from now. What are all the qualities you would like them to have? So they really thought about that. And one of the qualities they thought about was we would like them to be really confident. We'd like them to be able to have deep academic conversations and be very confident as learners. And they'll develop that confidence by learning to speak very thoughtfully. So then they thought, think about our students now. Who are they actually now? And one of the things they realized is, although they want their students to be very confident learners who give good arguments, that right now students are often shy or they're not sure about giving their thinking. So they really wanted them to develop that. And then they thought about the future, the vision, versus now. What's an opportunity for growth from who students actually are now to the ideal we'd like them to have? And the research theme, sometimes called a vision for student success, positively expresses the ideal student qualities you hope to build in your students. And the whole school, the whole faculty created this together, their research theme. And you can see their research themes over 4 years. So their research theme was to create a positive academic self-identity through confident academic conversation. And in their academic conversations, they would construct viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others. And over time, they kept that core idea of positive academic identity through confident academic conversations, but they added specific ideas like they'll do problem solving, we'll plan the board writing, we'll plan the journals that students will write in so that students will be able to build their confident academic conversations. They also planned, so that was one element, was this vision of how do we build confident academic conversations in which students are constructing arguments. A second element, in addition to the lesson study cycles, is knowledge flow within the school and from the outside. So during the study phase of lesson study, they read many articles, looked at many videos of teaching through problem solving. You can find those videos at our website. And they also asked a knowledgeable outside mathematics educator to comment on a draft of their lesson plan. They also had a final commentator observe their lesson and comment on the research lesson. And they visited other schools that were using teaching through problem solving. So those are some of the ways they got knowledge from the outside. For example, here's one comment that an outside commentator made on one of their research lessons in 2016. What's the new learning in this lesson? Mathematics is joyful when students can expect to learn something new in every lesson. So he didn't want students to just go through a procedure. He wanted them to discover, to have an aha during the lesson. Here's an example of knowledge flow within the school. So the teachers would write a newsletter after each research lesson so teachers could learn from other teachers' research lessons, and they could share as a school some ideas from the research lesson. So for example, the team was noting strategies that they had used to support students' conversations and encouraging other grade levels to try those strategies as well. Here's another way that teachers shared their knowledge. When they began inquiry into the question, how do we get students to carry the cognitive load for the lesson? How do we get students to be the leaders of the lesson rather than teachers conferring the knowledge? They shared all of their knowledge as teachers about how to do that. And here are other posters where the teachers shared their strategies for working towards the school research theme. And the changes in student learning routines that we saw a lot, such as focusing on one problem, using the board carefully, students solving the problem in their journals and using their journals to present their thinking. Those changes in student learning routines were made possible by changes in teachers' learning routines. So teachers used lesson study to study the content and the standards and mathematics research. So for example, they studied other lessons where teachers had students build this new interpretation of remainder and division. They used their lesson study phase to study what are strategies to bring to life the school's vision of confident learners. And they used the study process to study routines such as journal use, board use, discussion, student-led summary. They also formed a small steering committee in the school that every 2 weeks they came up with a new prompt for school-wide inquiry. So for example, one prompt was, how do you make student thinking visible in your classroom? Teachers worked on that individually in their classroom, and then they brought an example to the school-wide meeting, and teachers shared, this is how I make student thinking visible in my classroom. So that's another way of building knowledge flow at the school, within the school. Teachers could learn from each other. How did good ideas about good mathematics instruction change from 2016 to 2019? Well, it happens that we have lessons from 2016, research lessons from 2016 and 2019, both planned by the third grade team on equivalent fractions. And the same instructor taught both lessons in 2016, 2019. So I could see, how did ideas about good mathematics instruction change? So for example, in 2016, they had many elements of a good lesson plan, their research lesson plan from lesson study, but they didn't have, for example, a board plan, a plan for what's going to go on the board, a student voiced summary of the new learning from the lesson, They didn't report research on the content and curriculum, and they didn't report how they had used that research on equivalent fractions to design the instruction. So there was quite a bit of change in the research lesson plan from 2016 to 2019 that we see at UR. In 2016 and 2019, teachers anticipated student thinking in their lesson plan. But in 2016, they just said, oh, students might inaccurately line up the pieces, or they might draw circles instead of using linear measure. But by 2019, they had 10 different ideas about how students' thinking might emerge. For example, they said students might think bigger than half because there are more pieces and bigger pieces. Or they might use a visual model that shows different size holes when they're looking at 4/8 and 1/2. So they had much more sophisticated ideas about how students, what might be students' anticipated thinking. Another change from 2016 to 2019 is that the lesson goals in 2016 were vocabulary, notation, how to write 1/2, and procedure. Whereas in 2019, there was one big lesson goal, which was students will understand that two different fractions could have the same size. They'll understand that, and they'll be able to prove why that's true, why 1/2 and 4/8 could be the same size. So from 2016 to 2019, the teachers built a very different idea of what's a high quality lesson. That it's a high quality lesson if students invent the next mathematics in the curriculum by solving a novel problem that requires it. So in 2016, the teachers gave a number of kind of exercises on equivalent fractions. Is 3/8 larger than, smaller than, or the same size as 1/2 was the kind of problems that they gave in 2016. But in 2019, they gave a single problem. The problem was the other teacher and I disagree. Mr. Jimenez thinks that 4/8 is bigger than 1/2. I think that 1/2 is bigger than 4/8. Can you solve the disagreement between us? They had one problem, and students had to figure out, how do I solve that disagreement? Another change, so they solved one big problem that they were not given a solution to, rather than lots of little problems. They also, in 2019, had new instructional routines to make student thinking visible, using the board, using journals, using student-led discussion and summarization. And they had a new study of the content and research to illuminate the unit design in which students can invent the next mathematics. So they weren't just focused on one lesson, they were focused on the whole unit. How can we design the unit so that students can invent each new mathematical idea? And it was lesson study that made these changes in the lesson possible. So they studied content and curriculum during the study phase. They saw teaching through problem-solving lessons at other schools, at their own school, online, and they wanted to see the same joy of discovery in their own students. And they had lots of comments from knowledgeable outside others. So teachers at Muir also said that participating in lesson study changed their daily planning, not just their research lessons, but what they did every day. As one teacher said, now we think about the goals of each lesson, not necessarily what I'm going to say, but what our big goal is for the lesson. Another thing they said was, before there wasn't really an idea of a whole mathematical unit. We were teaching skills like addition and subtraction, but there wasn't an understanding of what does a whole addition and subtraction unit look like, so that students can build their own powerful understanding of addition and subtraction. This teacher at Muir says whole school lesson study increases the depth of the conversation around mathematics. We become more thoughtful about what we want to prioritize. Because we're having these collective conversations about what number sense looks like in kindergarten through 5th grade, it helps us understand how much of an impact our own instruction has on students throughout the grades. The same teacher says, I can go to colleagues and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. I can go to my colleagues because we're all engaging in the same type of work. The wealth of knowledge is within each other. We see that and learn from that directly, rather than gambling on some outsider to come in and share information. So teachers are discovering the wealth of knowledge within each other. At Muir and the other schools that were successful in building school-wide lesson study, it was a slow expansion. In 2015-16, there was one volunteer team, and then gradually that team reached out to their colleagues at their grade levels. That was a cross-grade level team. And in 2018-19, all teachers participated. But the initial cross-grade team worked for 2 years, and they themselves discovered the power of teaching through problem solving and lesson study before they encouraged other people to come in. But all teachers participated in the school-wide vision, the research theme, and the theory of action. So all the teachers in school felt invested in the work of that cross-grade team. And one of the teachers says, one of the things that made whole school lesson study successful was the gradual transition, starting with teachers who were passionate to dive in and try it. By conducting cycles, we learned why this was such a powerful method of developing lessons and units, and then we became the leads. So rather than coming top down from administration, teachers heard from colleagues about why this is such a powerful practice. Hearing from teacher colleagues provides more of a chance for buy-in when you transition to whole school. So not a top-down, but coming from the teachers, and teachers had the time to see the power of these approaches. At the different school-wide lesson study sites, it developed at different paces, but all developed through teacher and administrator joint leadership. And it responded to teachers' basic human needs for autonomy, belonging, and competence. So teachers were not forced to do this. They had the autonomy. They saw the power themselves. It also supported warm human relationships. Teachers belonged to the groups. They felt support from their colleagues. And it built teachers' competence. It focused on problems that were of interest to the teachers and made them feel more competent in their teaching, not just problems that someone else had put in. Next steps, if you'd like to take next steps with this work, I'd recommend our website. There are several free self-paced online courses, so you can explore teaching through problem solving, you can explore journals, you can explore lesson study on your own or with a small team. And that's a good way for interested teachers or teams or coaches to experiment with lesson study. A few teachers experimenting, seeing the power, and then gently, slowly reaching out to colleagues is a good way to spread. You can see about school-wide lesson study at the website as well. And you can find resources on school-wide lesson study. You can see the video that we saw today. We didn't see the whole video, so you can see student solutions at the end, how students presented their own thinking. Please feel free to dub. People around the world have dubbed those videos into other languages, so please feel free to subtitle them with Google Translate or whatever. And you can see lots of video and lesson plans also. I recommend this book by Akiko Takahashi on mathematics teaching through problem solving. You can also find a handbook on lesson study. And last but not least, I encourage you, if you can possibly, to join WALS. It's not an expensive membership, and there's a meeting coming up in the Netherlands in November, and lots of opportunity there to present your work from your schools or to learn from other schools. There will be an online component to that as well. And John Muir School will soon be available for laboratory visits. It's going to open up regularly for visits from outsiders. So there's the website address. Please also feel free to contact me at my email, but you can find all the materials and video that I presented today at that website address. So thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Okay, thank you for sharing your experience on subject of our seminar. Give me a few minutes to summarize a little bit your presentation for the audience, all right? After that, we have some questions or doubts or compliments from our participants. So give me 2 or 3 minutes. Enquanto Catherine estava apresentando, eu coletei algumas informações centrais, não consegui coletar todas, mas alguma coisa no início, no meio e no fim que vou relatar para vocês. Catherine, ela trouxe um trabalho realizado em parceria com educadores de Chicago, Friedkin, Takahashi e Watanabe, em uma escola básica de São Francisco. Ela explica o que é um problema de matemática, ou seja, uma tarefa na qual não foi aprendida anteriormente, sabemos disso, né? Pois, do contrário, se constitui em um exercício. No ensino, por meio da resolução de problemas, os alunos constroem cada novo conceito matemático ou procedimento por meio de discussão de trabalho do aluno estrategicamente selecionado. O problema versou sobre uma divisão com restos, são 27 crianças e cada carro da montanha-russa comporta 6 passageiros. De quantos carros precisamos? Essa é uma primeira vez que os alunos veem um problema em que eles precisam arredondar para o próximo número inteiro. No papel, os alunos trabalham e revisam seus pensamentos sobre um problema, registram as ideias dos colegas sobre novos insights e resumem a aula, refletem sobre o que aprenderam e mostram como seu pensamento mudou. No papel também, os alunos revisam o que aprenderam nas aulas anteriores e eles veem o crescimento de seus próprios conhecimentos matemáticos e práticas. Eles valorizam as ideias dos colegas, desenvolvem o hábito de refletir sobre como e por que seus pensamentos mudaram. E Catherine disse que eles se tornam metacognitivos nessa seara. Estrategicamente, um aluno vai à lousa e apresenta essa nova matemática. O acesso à lousa promove revisita à história da aula, comparação de estratégias, etc. Aí vem uma série de detalhes que eu não consegui dar conta de todas. Depois disso, a Catherine apresenta a construção da aula pelo Lesson Study, destacando o famoso ciclo que passa por estudos, planejamento, a aula e reflexão após a aula. Catherine relatou o que mudou no ensino-aprendizagem dos alunos em matemática e o que foi gatilho para que os professores disseminassem mudanças no seu modo de ensinar. Nesses pontos, Catherine disse que a resolução de problemas foi meio importante e trazer o pensamento do aluno ao primeiro plano também foi. Para ela, houve uma mudança no modus operandi, e eu acrescento que eu acho que é mais do que isso, é um modus vivendi mesmo, dos professores em pensar aulas, e despertou o interesse dos professores pelos resultados que alcançaram. Isso foi o que eu consegui resumir de tudo que Catherine trouxe para nós, e eu convido agora os participantes a escreverem, a trazerem suas perguntas. Podem trazê-las na língua portuguesa sem problema algum, a gente vai selecionando e traduzindo para a Catherine, e o Eurico vai me ajudar enquanto eu vou selecionando e passando as perguntas para a Catherine, e o Eurico vai traduzindo para os nossos participantes. So, Catherine, we have some questions and doubts from our participants, and one of them is from Severiano Machado Neto, asking, my question is, how can I accommodate a student with special educational needs who often need adapted classes in a lesson study class?
Thank you. That's such a good question. In the lesson we saw, we didn't see the end of it, but there are 4 children in that class who have special education plans. So they're required by law to have special accommodations. One of them, I recommend watching the video at the website. One of them, Lyric, is the final student to show his solution at the board. Lyric, when he entered 5th grade, was reading at a 1st grade level and writing at a 1st grade level. He really could not write at all. So when they started doing journals, the teacher would go over to him and he would whisper what he wanted to write in his journal, and the teacher would write it for him in his journal. By the end of the year, after that, doing that every day, he could write a little bit and then a little bit more, and he could write in his journal by the end of the year. But he goes to the board and presents his work. He kind of takes over the class. His name is Lyric. And he's so proud, and he's telling everyone that I can show you in my picture where the remainder is. It's these 3 dots. And everyone goes, oh, that's where the remainder 3 is. So you can see that even though he's got a fairly severe reading, writing disability, he can lead the class and he can feel very proud of the intellectual contributions he's made. So that's a very good example of how the journal writing, the board is very good for students with special needs because, say you get distracted a lot or you take much more time to read, the information on the board is there. It doesn't change. So it's a big help to children with disabilities. So, and I can't write in the video or write in writing that those children have disabilities, but there are 3 children in that class or 4 with pretty severe disabilities.
Então, eu vou traduzir. É uma coisa emocionante para mim poder traduzir essa coisa que a Catherine falou. Então, essa é uma pergunta muito importante e ela diz que ela convida todos a assistir o vídeo completo, porque foi somente um clipe. E no vídeo vai ficar claro que existe 3 a 4 estudantes com muita dificuldade da aprendizagem. E um deles, ele chegou no 5º ano com nível de leitura e de escrita de 1º ano. Então, ele não sabia nem escrever direito. Mas aquela aula de resolução de problemas, em que valoriza a participação e o pensamento, o aluno, ele não conseguia escrever, ele chamou a professora para sussurrar para o professor o que ele estava pensando. E, gradativamente, ele começou, através dos jornais, do diário que ele escreve, ele aprendeu, juntamente com os outros alunos, a escrever. E, durante o ano, ele chegou ao ponto de ele poder ir à lousa e explicar para todo o resto da classe as suas ideias, escrever e justificar por que o resto da divisão era aquilo e tudo mais. E aí a classe inteira foi, assim, deu uma torcida para ele, Deu, assim, um reconhecimento mesmo pela aprendizagem dele. Então, a Catherine fala que a presença dos alunos, respeitando o seu próprio passo e suas próprias dificuldades, a própria presença e a ação dos alunos ajuda a construir e recuperar as dificuldades de aprendizagem que ele tem. E uma das maneiras de trazer essa evidência é a escrita dos jornais, estimula os alunos a explicitar suas próprias ideias e valorizar, e também a escrita na lousa, aquele board, que em japonês chama-se bancho, porque a hora que você coloca na lousa o registro de todo o fluxo de pensamento cognitivo dos alunos, juntamente com a resolução de problemas, é a evidência que acompanha a aprendizagem dos alunos. Eu não quero alongar mais, mas é isso o resumo. E a Catherine falou que os 3 ou 4 alunos com deficiências, eles progrediram demasiado e principalmente com o apoio de toda a classe do reconhecimento, do desenvolvimento do pensamento matemático dos colegas. Isso. Obrigada.
Okay, thank you, Yuriko. Thank you, Catherine. We have other question from Adriana Regi. She said, congratulations on the work you do in US on lesson study. Thank you for your immense contribution to this topic. Can you explain some aspects on lesson study process? What are the elements considered by teachers when formulating objectives from the research lesson? What is the dynamic of reflection on the research lesson? Let's just read in Portuguese too, Catherine, just a minute. Parabéns pelo trabalho que você faz nos Estados Unidos no estudo de lições ou lesson study. Obrigado pela sua imensa contribuição para esse tópico. Você pode explicar alguns aspectos do processo do Lesson Study? Quais são os elementos considerados pelos professores ao formular objetivos para a aula de pesquisa, Research Lesson? Qual é a dinâmica de reflexão na Research Lesson? So, Catherine, please, your answer.
I think two things are really central in teachers' reflection. I'm sorry, in teachers' planning of the lesson. One thing is the mathematics. What's the really important mathematics? How do students learn that? How can they learn that mathematics through their own investigation and discussion rather than through teachers demonstrating it? So one thing is the mathematics. And the other thing is the long-term, the school vision, the research theme. What are the qualities we want students to have? For example, if we want them to be confident, powerful learners, how do we need to design instruction? So it's those two things, the long-term research theme goal vision for the students and the mathematics long-term, but also the mathematics of that lesson. What do we want students to learn in this lesson that's new and in the larger mathematics? So the mathematics and the school research vision. And in terms of reflection, I think the important thing is what can we say students learn during this lesson? What's the evidence that students learn what we wanted them to learn? And what could we do better in the future so that students would learn what we wanted them to learn? So it's about the evidence of student learning.
Thank you,
Catherine. Vou resumir bem assim, especificamente, os 2 pontos mais importantes que a Catherine colocou, que é a essência mesmo do Lesson Study. Ela fala que os 2 pontos mais importantes, primeiro, é o conteúdo matemático, é o conhecimento de matemática dos professores. Porque sem esse domínio, não consegue planejar as lições, o Research Lesson, por exemplo. E outro ponto muito importante é a visão da escola em relação à aprendizagem dos alunos. Então, a dinâmica da reflexão depois da aula é sobre se realmente os alunos, na observação, foi evidenciado quais são as evidências da aprendizagem dos alunos quanto ao objetivo daquele planejamento. E na hora do planejamento, é a partir do conhecimento matemático para desenhar. O desenho das tarefas é a coisa mais importante, mas que vem do pensamento matemático. São os 2 pontos mais importantes que refletem na dinâmica da reflexão.
Thank you, Yuriko. We have another question from Yuriko. From Yuriko. So she asked for you how this wonderful example of, I don't know the name of the school.
Muir.
Okay, Muir, thank you. being adopted in other schools and regions. So, em português, please. Como esse maravilhoso exemplo da escola Muir está sendo adotado em outras escolas e regiões? Your answer, please.
Some other representatives from other schools have been attending research lessons like the one we saw in video. There were some teachers from other schools. So other schools, teachers are going back and talking to their colleagues, trying to build usually one lesson study team first and then spread. So it's really being, I think, led by teachers, usually working with the principal or administrator of the school to build it. And I think, you can't design it from the top down. It has to come from teachers' own investigation and teachers building it. So I think it's adapted in various ways. Some schools, it's just one team and they're slowly reaching out. Some schools, it's more planned by the teachers working together.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Catherine. Bem, pessoal, eu fiz essa pergunta porque uma das grandes dificuldades aqui no Brasil é você formar grupo de lesson study e como espalhar isso, né, como espelho para os outros grupos. Então, ela diz que realmente o exemplo, aquele research lesson, por exemplo, é assistido por professores interessados que vêm assistir na aula pública, né, de observação. E essas pessoas voltam para as escolas e tentam formar seus próprios grupos. Mas é um processo que não depende somente de cima para baixo, porque todas as escolas têm a sua hierarquia. Então, os grupos de lesson study que funcionam, eles funcionam por meio de professores trabalhando exatamente com seus coordenadores pedagógicos e seus diretores. Essa é a forma mais sólida para consolidar grupos de lesson study. É isso. E isso, desculpe entrar mais assim no nosso artigo, que vai ser publicado logo, a formação, as dificuldades para formar grupos de lesson study aqui no Brasil é relatado no nosso artigo. E justamente a solução é realmente de ser de baixo para cima e não uma solução de cima para baixo através de leis. Thank you very much, Catherine, because you answered the way I'm trying to introduce a lesson study here in Brazil. Bottom-up activity from the school-wide example. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Yuriko. Thank you, Catherine. We have another question from Renan Pires de Araújo. He said, Mrs. Catherine, can lesson study be applied on undergraduate classes? Is there any difference from applying on basic education schools? Just in Portuguese. Senhora Catherine, lesson study pode ser aplicada em aulas de graduação? Existe alguma diferença em aplicar em escolas da elementary school, do ensino básico? Your answer.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yes, there are some nice examples in the US of use for undergraduates and also for pre-service teacher, basically students who are studying to be teachers. And actually there is a book coming out, WALS, World Association of Lesson Study, has a series of books on lesson study. And there's one coming out soon that describes 15 different programs where lesson study is being used for undergraduates or teacher candidates. So I would recommend that volume, edited by Sharon Dodger. I don't think it's out yet, but if you check the WALS website, it'll be announced when it is out. So that's one good source of information. And whoever wrote that question, if they email me, I'd be happy to send additional connections. There's also a big undergraduate lesson study effort at University of Wisconsin La Crosse. I think that's linked at my website, but if you Google University of Wisconsin La Crosse lesson study, you'll also find a lot on undergraduate.
A resposta é que realmente é uma pergunta muito importante e está sendo pesquisada com a contribuição de vários trabalhos. Está havendo uma publicação com 15 programas que trabalha a formação undergraduate, né, cursos de graduação sobre a influência do lesson study para a formação de graduação, certo? E ela disse que quem escreveu essa pergunta pode escrever um e-mail para ela que ela poderia explicar melhor outras fontes de informações. Principalmente a Universidade de Wisconsin, se colocasse no Google University of Wisconsin, vai conseguir ter acesso também ao programa que eles estão trabalhando nisso. Isso é um problema bastante sério, mas a publicação ela pode fornecer os dados dessa publicação, que tem 15 programas sobre esse assunto.
Thank you, Yuriko. Another question from Alusca Dias Ramos de Macedo Silva. She said, congratulations on the lecture. Among the adaptations made in the implementation of the lesson study at school, which one is the most difficult for teachers? So, just a minute in Portuguese. A Luzca perguntou, parabéns pela palestra, entre as adaptações feitas na implementação do Lesson Study na escola, qual é a mais difícil para os professores? Your answer, please.
I think the most difficult is having other people watch your teaching. So the sites that have been successful, often they very slowly, maybe they find 1 or 2 volunteers, but they very slowly, nobody has to show their teaching. It's just, you learn that the conversation, the reflection is focused on the data of student responses, not on the teaching, not on the teacher. So I think that's a big change, and the schools that have been successful haven't forced teachers to do that, but they've created an environment in which you have interesting discussions of student learning, and teachers will want to do that. For example, one teacher said, when I do a research lesson, I get to see how all 25 students thought about the problem because someone's watching all of them. I don't get that kind of data usually. So it makes it very powerful for teachers, but I think having other teachers watch your instruction is definitely the most challenging part.
Thank you. Então, a dificuldade maior que ela considera é o professor sentir-se observado. Que esse hábito de observar a aula dos outros é uma barreira bastante grande. Então, mesmo que seja uma ou outra pessoa, para mudar a ideia de que a observação da aula não é somente a sua maneira de dar a aula, mas sobre a aprendizagem dos alunos, essa mudança de perspectiva é uma coisa muito importante para ser reconhecida pelos professores, para quebrar essa barreira de ser observado. Essencialmente é isso.
Thank you both. Another question is from Ana Dias. She asked you, Catherine, if we will have access to your slides. Would you be
Yes.
excellent?
Sorry, do you need to do it in Portuguese too? No.
Yes. Ana Isabel pergunta se nós teremos acesso aos slides dela e que seria excelente. E eu acho que Yuriko quer traduzir. Eu acho que todo mundo entendeu, não? Pelo sorriso, eu acho que todo mundo entendeu que sim, ela vai disponibilizar os slides para a gente. Next question is from Simeia. Simeia Kumagai. Ela pergunta... just a minute. My question is, how can we include lesson study classes in Investigate Mathematics, mathematical modeling, and have the student be an active participant in both face-to-face and online classrooms, just in Portuguese. Minha pergunta é como podemos incluir aulas de lesson study na matemática investigativa, modelagem matemática, e que o aluno seja participante ativo em sala de aula, tanto presencial como à distância, online. Your answer?
I don't have an answer, but that's a good question for lesson study, to investigate that. When we had the pandemic, teachers at several school-wide sites continued their lesson study, and they learned that they needed to shift teaching through problem solving online. So they used the second half of the lesson next day. So they posed the problem, and then students went offline to give their individual solutions, and students uploaded their individual solutions. And the next day they had the discussion of the students' individual solutions and then posed the next problem. So they had to break the lesson in half. So they discovered that through lesson study, because while students are working, it's not a good use of online time. So they broke up the lesson into half.
Ela disse que ela não tem exatamente uma resposta direta, mas é uma pergunta excelente. Ela fala que durante a pandemia teve mesmo esse problema de quase que a obrigatoriedade de trazer as aulas com resolução de problemas. Mas na hora de fazer resolução de problemas, coloca o problema. E aí a dinâmica foi mudada para os alunos pegar essa tarefa, resolveram offline e devolver na segunda metade, numa outra aula, trazer suas próprias soluções. Então, automaticamente, essa mudança de dinâmica forçada pela pandemia e ao fazer as aulas híbridas, fizeram com que os alunos aprendessem a trazer e compartilhar suas soluções na classe. Então, essa é uma forma que houve nas experiências de lesson study que os grupos dela estavam trabalhando, porque mesmo durante a pandemia, os grupos de estudo continuaram. Mas essa forma de fazer a matemática investigativa, trazer, de certa forma, foi facilitado ou descoberta essa nova maneira de fazer a matemática. E isso é uma outra forma de fazer lesson study.
All right, thank you, Eurico. Thank you, Catherine. We have another one. Is from José Medeiros. He asked, how can we use technology in favor of teachers and students in a lesson study class? What about the didactic issue, the teacher's interaction with the student in Portuguese? Como podemos usar a tecnologia a favor dos professores e alunos em uma aula de lesson study? E na questão didática, da interação do professor com o aluno, como isso se daria, né? Your answer?
Yeah. Thank you. Again, I think that's a really good question to investigate through lesson study. You know, what are the impacts of technology? How are students perceiving it? How is the technology supporting students' learning? So I think that's a really good question to look at in lesson study. You know, there have been a number of lesson studies that have looked at aspects of technology, such as at Muir, they tried using a handheld computer for students to write their journals instead of writing them by hand, writing them by computer. And then they studied, you know, how was that? How did students perceive that? What did they perceive as better? What did they perceive as worse? And they came up with a lot of ideas. I mean, it was easier to share the students' journals, but it was harder for students to do some things like write pictures, you know, imagine the pictures. So it's a good question to investigate through lesson study.
Então, essa é uma outra questão muito importante que está vindo agora nos tempos modernos, não é? ela diz que realmente é um tópico para pesquisa. Na escola que ela mostrou, né, no John Muir School, eles estão estudando, por causa da pandemia e tudo, eles estão introduzindo o uso de, por exemplo, do tipo tablet, né, os computadores pessoais, para que os alunos escrevam suas ideias e contribuir, sabe, o jornal, o periódico, as notas, as notícias, e contribuir para a escrita, para que os alunos aprendam também a escrever nessas mídias, né? Mídias de comunicação, a tecnologia de comunicação. Então, eles estão assim, achando que isso aí é um assunto que vai intermediar esse pensamento, a metodologia da Lesson Study, como sendo uma ferramenta e é um tópico de estudo, pesquisa daqui para frente. Obrigada.
Thank you, Yuriko. We have another one from Viviane Hums. Thank you for the excellent conference, Catherine. I would like to know if in joint sections where professors reflect on teaching practice on or others, do they use any tools to guide this reflection? Thank you very much. In Português. Obrigada pela excelente conferência, Catherine. Gostaria de saber se nas sessões conjuntas em que os professores refletem sobre a prática docente, própria ou alheia, utilizam algum instrumento para orientar essa reflexão. Muito obrigada. Your answer?
Yes, I think it's very important to have good tools to guide reflection. I think the good tools keep the reflection safe, make sure that it's based on the evidence of student learning or the evidence from practice, not just somebody's opinion. And at our website, in the Conduct a Cycle section, there's a section on reflection, and there are a lot of tools there, but you can find other tools, in handbooks in other places. I would especially recommend, if you have a professor come in and watch a lesson and reflect on it, have them look at some examples. You can see them on our website and other places of lesson. It's called Final Commentary. What is it that is important to reflect on? And I think as a professor coming in, it's important to understand what the teachers want, what's the teacher's goal, and to really recognize all the positive things about practice while also recognizing one thing that could be improved, but really just one thing that can be improved, not 10 things to improve. So I think that's a good guideline, and you can find under Final Commentary information about that.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Então, vou resumir o que ela falou. Ela disse que essa é realmente uma pergunta muito importante, muito boa. E que no site dela, nos diversos, no menu, né? Então, o professor ter um certo guia, um roteiro para fazer essas reflexões no final, como um instrumento, é muito importante para não ficar a reflexão somente nas opiniões pessoais, né? Porque a análise no final da Research Lesson, ou da aula de observação, é sobre a aprendizagem do aluno. Então, ela recomenda fortemente também, além de consultar o guia dela, né, guia que é no website, onde tem a parte de Final Comments, existem vários exemplos e roteiros para ser utilizados para guiar uma reflexão produtiva. Mas ela recomenda também a publicação da professora Camille, que fala sobre o que da aprendizagem do aluno é mais importante para trazer como evidência, para melhorar as aulas. Então, em resumo, é isso.
Thank you, Yuriko. Thank you, Catherine. Another one is from Roberta Menduni. She asked, I could see in the video that the researchers were very close to the students making observations. In the lesson study that you developed, Do the researchers who accompany the classes help with the tasks if the students ask for it, or is this role only up to the teacher who is teaching the class? Em português. Eu pude ver no vídeo que pesquisadores estavam bem perto dos estudantes fazendo as observações. No Lesson Study que você desenvolveu, né, que vocês desenvolvem, os pesquisadores que acompanham as aulas ajudam nas tarefas, caso os estudantes peçam, ou essa atuação cabe somente ao professor que está ministrando a aula? Your answer?
Yes, the researchers and the other teachers do not help with the lesson. Only the teacher teaches the lesson. And that's very important. Often we say the observers are an extra pair of ears, extra pair of eyes, not an extra mouth.
Então, essa é uma pergunta muito importante e a posição que ela coloca que realmente o papel de conversar com os alunos é somente do professor. Os observadores, eles são considerados como sendo ouvidos extras, olhares extras para aprofundar a análise. Não cabe, não tem uma boca a mais extra. Isso é realmente papel do professor. E os pesquisadores observadores são auxiliares para aprofundar a análise da lesson.
Thank you. Another one is from Roberta Menduni again. Lesson study was designed around the culture of the Japanese educator. Therefore, its use in other cultures may require some adaptation. Were adaptations necessary in the US editions of lesson study? If so, which ones? Em português. Lesson Study foi concebido em torno da cultura do educador japonês. Portanto, seus usos em outras culturas podem exigir alguma adaptação. Foram necessárias adaptações nas edições americanas, no caso da US, né, do Lesson Study? Se sim, quais? Your answer?
Yes, one thing that San Francisco added is a pre-lesson discussion. During the pre-lesson discussion, they ask all teachers to solve the mathematics problem and imagine student solutions. They describe why they designed the lesson as they did. They tell people you need to be quiet, you carefully take notes, observe. They tell them the role of the observer, not to talk, not to help. And they remind them of, your job is not to interfere. So in Japan, I think the culture assumes when you go in someone's classroom, you just observe, but we don't have that culture in the US. So also in Japan, I think teachers all know the mathematics curriculum, solve the problem themselves, but we don't necessarily have that culture in the US. So they needed to add about a half-hour pre-lesson discussion in order to build that culture.
Ela diz que realmente nos Estados Unidos precisou de fazer uma lesson antes de começar o ciclo de lesson study para que o pessoal entenda o que é lesson study, oferecendo um problema matemático para os participantes resolverem, antecipar as perguntas das crianças, entender que seu papel para dar a aula ou como observador é para verificar a aprendizagem dos alunos em cima do conteúdo que eles devem aprender, os objetivos educacionais. Também ter a cultura de não interferir, não falar durante a aula dos outros, também anotar corretamente as observações que devem ser adotadas. Então, são todas essas coisas culturais que no Japão as pessoas respeitam totalmente a autoridade do professor, então jamais interferem nas aulas dos outros, enquanto que nos Estados Unidos tiveram que falar que não deve fazer barulho, ou conversar entre eles enquanto observam, e todas essas coisas eles precisavam fazer. Então, essas são as mudanças culturais que eles precisaram fazer para poder executar, para que haja compreensão sobre Lesson Study nos Estados Unidos.
Thank you. One more question from Roberta Menduni. In a second round of the experience you told us about at the American school, what could be improved? What didn't work? What was left to do? So, em português, em uma segunda rodada da experiência que você nos contou na escola americana, o que poderia ser melhorado? O que não funcionou? O que restava fazer? Your answer?
It's a really good question. One big thing that can be improved is how teachers' lesson study shapes the future curriculum. So in Japan, textbook writers come to see research lessons and they learn from teachers learning. In the US, typically teachers learning does not change the curriculum. So we need to see the curriculum change in response to teachers' lesson study. So for example, the curriculum needs to be designed so that it's designed around problems like the Japanese curriculum is. So research on the Japanese curriculum has shown that it's changed greatly over the last 30 years. Same topics, but shift in the textbooks so that students can learn each new mathematics through problem solving. So we need that kind of impact on the curriculum in the US. Maybe that's the major improvement I'd like to see.
Então, a resposta dela é realmente uma coisa impactante. Ela diz que nos Estados Unidos e também aqui no Brasil, nós vemos que a maneira como os professores mudam através da Lesson Study não impacta o currículo escolar. Porque os livros didáticos nos Estados Unidos, eles não dependem da mudança, das mudanças ocasionadas pela Lesson Study. Enquanto que no Japão, os livros didáticos são escritos pelos autores que fazem a Lesson Study, visitam e aprendem com os produtos da Lesson Study, certo? Então, ela acha que esse é um desafio muito grande que deveria ser melhorado. Então, o que não muda nos Estados Unidos é essa dificuldade, essa barreira, de que por mais que haja melhorias na aprendizagem dos alunos, ainda não é suficiente para impactar o currículo da matemática escolar.
Thank you, Yuriko. The last question is from Ana Isabel Espínola Dias. She said, have you seen any experience using lesson study on the development of computational thinking skills? Em português. Você já viu alguma experiência de uso do Lesson Study no desenvolvimento de habilidades de pensamento computacional? Your answer?
Yes, I haven't seen the research lessons, but I've read some studies. So if that person wants to email me, I'd be happy to see if I can find the studies and share them. Yes, I think that's a good topic for lesson study. Yeah.
Ela diz que ela viu sim, que está havendo estudos do pensamento computacional com Lesson Study, que a pessoa que perguntou pode escrever para ela, que ela pode compartilhar o endereço, né, as fontes sobre isso. Deixa somente acrescentar que aqui no Brasil existe a divisão educacional da Casio Calculators, que está fazendo Lesson Study com o nosso grupo de estudos no estado de São Paulo, utilizando o Lesson Study para desenvolver os pensamentos computacionais. Então, se alguém tiver interesse de participar dos seminários da Casio, poderia ser uma ideia para fazer na nossa realidade. Thank you, Catherine. I said about the Casio Educational Division, about the lesson study that we are doing in the state of São Paulo. There exists a group of computational thinking on the school mathematics curriculum, together with the Educational Secretary of the State of São Paulo. So it's very solid group of study in lesson study with technology. So I apologize to interfere in your answer, but I wanted to present to the Brazilian audience that there is actually indeed a group of study, lesson study with calculators. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Yuriko. Thank you, Catherine. We have another one. So that one is not the last one. It's from Marcelene Duarte. She said, I am Marcelene from Anchieta, Espírito Santo. I got to know lesson study in 2019, and since then I've been studying ways to disseminate and implement it as a methodology to improve quality and collaboration between teachers for this. It's a process that takes time, as breaking old habits is very difficult, but persistence has shown us that it is possible, and we have been able to observe some positive points of acceptance and desire to transform teaching to obtain better results. So, em português, sou Marcelene de Anchieta, no Espírito Santo. Conheci o Lesson Study em 2019 e desde então venho estudando meios de divulgar e implementar como metodologia para melhorar a qualidade e a colaboração entre os professores para isso. É um processo que leva tempo, pois quebrar velhos hábitos é muito difícil. Porém, a persistência tem nos mostrado que é possível, pois conseguimos observar alguns pontos positivos de aceitação e desejo de transformar o ensino para obter resultados melhores. Your answer?
Well, I think that's a wonderful comment to end on, because I feel like that questioner has captured a really important idea, which is this is slow work. It needs to be embraced by teachers. It can't be forced. And I think what I look for to make a successful site is joy for students during learning and joy for teachers during learning. And if we have those moments of joy and discovery, we are going to want to invest more in lesson study. And as students, they're going to want to invest more in mathematics or whatever topic. So I think trying to design for and look for those moments of joy. How can we create that joy in learning for teachers as well as students? Those ahas is where we want to go in all of our work.
Então, é bastante comprida, é uma resposta bastante pessoal dela, né? Então, eu vou resumir, porque eu não posso repetir todas as palavras dela. Mas ela fica muito feliz de perceber que essa pergunta capturou o entendimento de que a lesson study é um processo mais lento para o professor reconhecer e sentir a necessidade de sentir a alegria e o prazer de trazer um ensino com alegria e significado para os alunos. Não é? Então, é um processo realmente lento, mas que é extremamente importante para o reconhecimento, para o sentimento dos professores, do valor desse trabalho coletivo e agradável para trazer. E, então, ela diz que, mesmo no caso dela, né, nas experiências dela, ela quer fazer maiores esforços na direção de desenhar mais tarefas para trazer essa alegria e o significado para a aprendizagem, tanto dos professores como dos alunos. Mais ou menos é isso que ela quis dizer.
Thank you, Yuriko. Thank you, Catherine. Catherine, see how interesting people are. I always think to be the last question, but we have another one, and it's really the last one. Okay. Let me see. It's from Sandra Antonio. She said, I'm interested in participating in this group. If you can give me more information, I would appreciate it.
Okay. Is that for your group? Yeah.
I think it's your group, Mill's group. I think so.
Oh, okay. She should feel free to email me. That's great. And the website that's in the slides is a very good place for also learning more. And World Association of Lesson Study, you can Google it. It's WALSnet. That's also another place. Happy to share information. Yeah.
Então, vocês entenderam? Ela disse que nos slides, todos aqueles menu do site dela, tem muitas informações. E também ela está aberta para receber aí. Esse é o site e o e-mail dela. E ela estaria muito feliz de interagir com todos. E ela convida também para o WALS. Por exemplo, a Maria Alice, eu e nossos outros colaboradores, nós já participamos do WALS 4 vezes, não é verdade, Alice? Então, nós somos participantes do WALS, aprendemos sempre muito. Então, thank you very much, Catherine, for your wonderful talk. And I told the people to join the WALS, as I and Maria Alice, we are WALS participants.
Really?
Yes, thank you very much.
Unfortunately, our time is running out. So, Catherine, thank you so much for your talk and answers. And certainly, the content brought new ideas and inspiration to our participants. So, thank you, Yuriko, for your help to us. Thank you for both. See you briefly.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Did you guys feel like we had a hand-raising storm yesterday? Yeah. Yeah, that was nice. Here's what we're going to think about today.